Fiji create history and leave England's Rugby World Cup preparations in disarray just 2 weeks before the start of the tournament. My name is Mark, let's talk rugby. We witnessed a piece of history today. It's maybe been a long time coming, and it's just a step that we'll be seeing kind of in the history of rugby as tier 2 nations are finally beginning to develop properly. Let's talk a bit about the game and then we'll come back to that a bit later. So England actually early on, they're looking a bit sharper than they were in previous games. Now you have to remember how bad they've looked in their previous warm-up games as well. When I say sharper, I don't mean that they were firing on all cylinders, but still compared to what they were previously, they were looking a bit better. Looks like they've been obviously working on their attack. Tuilagi actually looking effective, ball in hand. He's tying up defenders. And, the thing is, though, with a team like England, it's all kind of very fragile, I think. But Fiji get themselves caught offside and Ford opens the scoring from the tee. It's 3-0 to England. England then, they continue to apply pressure. They have a central scrum on the edge of the 22. They get it from the back of the scrum out to Ford, and then a nice long pass out to May. He hands off Rabutuamada, who goes way too high on him, and then May gets over in the corner. Better from England, as I said, but poor defence from Fiji there. Touchline conversions missed. It's 8-0 to England. Fiji then, they get their hands on the ball for a bit. They win a penalty. They decide that they're going to go for the post from about 45 metres out. Muntz nails the kick. It's 8-3. England then, again, they're looking decent. Again, not great, but, better than we've seen before with ball in hand. But their kicking game is a bit off. We've seen, dropped and, knocked on plenty of kicks as well, both in defence and attack. And, it just feels like the timing of jumps, the kind of eye on the ball, and also like their chase when they're kicking themselves just seem all to be a little bit off. Fiji managed to win themselves a scrum penalty. Genge goes down. They decide to go up the line and have possession in the England 22. Radradra goes on the burst, goes through George Ford's tackle, but it knocks it on and England are able to clear, but some warning signs from Fiji there. Fiji, they're looking a lot more positive at this stage. They've definitely got a foothold in the game. There's a period then where we have knock-ons from both sides as wet conditions have an effect. It would be hard to actually keep account of how many knock-ons there were from each team, but it was a lot. Then Rabutamada, he then managed to step his way through the English defence, draws the cover, and then he puts Nyaka Levu under the post. But then we have a TMO review that shows that the pass was forward in hands, so it's no try. Fiji, though, they come again. We have a great step from Mataravesi, then a bullocking run from Radradra, and they're back into that England 22. Mata is on the charge, 10 metres out, but the ball goes forward in the tackle. England then click clear, but Fiji have a line out 30 metres out. But they throw it straight to Genge, and then there's a no-arms tackle on him as he runs with the ball. Now England have a line out in the Fiji half. England, they get another penalty. Maui coming in from the side. England then kick to the corner. And it's feeling like, this could be bad for Fiji because they look like they were getting back in the game and now suddenly they're on their own line. Chesham claims the line out. They maul it to within a few metres. They have got penalty advantage. Malins can't get over in the right wing. Some really good cover defence from Fiji. Nice sliding tackles in there to get him into touch. Back for the penalty, and Maui gets himself a yellow card. England then go to the maul again, but this time Fiji get in there, they disrupt, they make it unplayable, and they turn it over. They then get it out of the scrum and off the field for halftime. It's 8-3 to England, but Fiji are the team that, for most of the end of that half were actually on the ascendancy. Start of the second half then, Stewart, he drops a long kick. He actually drops it backwards, so we've got no knock on, but then he regathers and kicks it out in the full, so Fiji get position in the England half. Fiji then attack off that line out, and they get it to the opposite wing, and Ravatau, he just turns May inside out, and then he puts Nyaka Levu over to score, and this time it does actually stand. Muntz converts and Fiji hit a lead 10-8, and they're well worth the lead at this stage as well. Fiji then, they go over the top at a line out to Tuisui. He's hit by Willis and Marler and needs a bit of treatment on field, so the referee stops play. We have a Timo check on the challenge, but there's no clear foul play, so we restart with a scrum to Fiji. They go left from the back of the scrum. Habosi, he just picks from the back of a ruck, and there's no one there opposing him, and then he sprints off. There's a covering tackle, but he easily avoids it and goes over the line to score. Muntz adds the extras, 17-8 to Fiji. England then concede a penalty, and Muntz stretches the lead even further, 20-8. England, though, do strike back pretty much instantly. They gather a restart. There's a chip over the top, and then Marcus Smith has the pace to get there and score under the post. We do have a bit of a Timo check to see he was offside. He gets the benefit of the doubt to call it that, it's level. I thought he might have been like a shade ahead, but you see those calls going either way. Anyway, Ford adds the extras as 2015. England have a chance to, salvage this game at this stage. Fiji then, though they almost score again from the restart. We've got Naya Kalevu. Sorry, I'm really bad at pronouncing his name. But Naya Kalevu rampaging down the wing, but then there's an excellent covering tackle from May, puts him into touch. Mitchell then gets himself pinged for a high tackle, and Muntz makes it 23-18. They're out beyond, a converted try now, and it really is getting worrying for England. England, they turn the ball over in the Fiji 22. They're on the attack. Ford tries a cross kick to Ben Earl, but he can't keep hold of the ball. As there was a tackle coming in from Muntz, looked like he took his eye off the ball and just dropped it, through his arms and then through his legs. England, they found a bit of a second wind, but they find themselves again in the shadows of the post. Some good work from Smith. Ford puts Merchant over in the corner. It's converted. We're at 23-21. It's a 1-point game, but crucially, Fiji are still ahead. On the restart then, Kerr drops it. Fiji take full advantage from it, go through a couple of phases, and Kuravoli, he goes over to score. Muntz converts. It's 30-22, and history is absolutely beckoning at this stage. England, they come looking to respond again. Earl gets himself isolated though, and Matabesi, he gets over the ball, and Fiji have a vital relieving penalty. They kick that up the line. They then win another penalty at the line out, and now it's just a case of running down the clock for the last couple of minutes. England do come again in the last minute, but at this stage that Fiji have the game won. Fiji managed to turn them over a few meters from the Fiji line. Muntz gets the ball off the field, and that's it. 30-22, well-deserved first win for Fiji over England. One of my commenters today said that felt that Fiji were going to win this one. You're absolutely right on that. They were much the better side. Other than that kind of start from England, Fiji were much the better side all the way through. We saw very little of the problems that they had in the line out against France. I felt that England didn't really attack their line out the way that France did. I would have thought that with Itoje in that line out that they actually would be up there and trying to disrupt, but they really didn't do it. Fiji actually won a couple of penalties, at least one penalty in the scrum, and were fairly solid the rest of the way through as well. So like set piece went well for them. They looked better in terms of their handling in the second half compared to that first half where both teams kind of struggled with the downpour that happened. So where does this leave the teams? Like England, there's going to be calls now, like Marcus Smith come on at fullback, and he did have an impact. There are going to be calls for him to start at fullback. I think that going forward, the guy is excellent, and you could play him in any position, and if you're on attack, he looks excellent. But him at fullback, in defence is a disaster waiting to happen. And when it happens, because he gets built up so much by the English press, the English media, when it does happen, they're just going to tear into him, and he's not going to deserve that, if it does happen. But it probably, I imagine it will happen at some stage if they decide to go with him at fullback, because in terms of Stewart was poor today, probably the poorest game I've seen him have for England at fullback. Not great timing when there's talk about pressure on his position, where it was crazy, because for me he was the one back for England that you could absolutely say he's earned his spot on the team, playing in a bad team, whereas the others were just there because they were last man standing out of all the people who were tried in those positions up to then. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But overall with England, like in that second half, like the pack just completely disappeared. Tuilagi went out of the game. Ford looked good in patches, but I felt like that 9-10 axis wasn't really working that well for them, and just lots of errors from them. We had flashes from the likes of Tuilagi and May, but just kind of drifting in and out of the game. We also saw Merchant and Ollie Lawrence as well, flashes from them, but just not consistent enough. And yeah, overall, I thought it was, very symptomatic of how England have been, where parts of the game look like they're almost there, but then something happens and it just all falls apart. And that's what happened to them today. They got the 8-0 lead. They were looking like, okay, maybe England have found something that's going to work for them. And then the slightest bit of pressure comes on from Fiji. Confidence, is obviously on the floor with them because they just folded and Fiji built up a lead. England come back at them, but never really looked like, even when there was only a 1 point game, you felt that Fiji were the team who were going to score next and pull away. And yeah, that's just where England are at the minute. Now, given the draw they have in the World Cup, I've said it before, this doesn't mean that they're getting knocked out in the pool stages, because Argentina have been, patchy. They produce one really good result and then they can't back it up. Japan's form has absolutely dropped off a cliff, since the last World Cup, especially in the last kind of 12 months or so. So it's, it's almost like looking at that pool, it's whoever can find a little bit of form in that pool is getting through to a quarter final, and you won't have to play that well. You just won't have to play as badly as how the other two are. And you're going to get into the quarter final, and then from there, put in decent performance and you're into a semi-final. So I'm not going to just write England off at this stage, but it is very worrying for them. For Fiji, there were so many great performances from them today, and they were missing, people like Bhatia there as well. Like, at 7, he was so good against France, and I think if they had him in there, the margin would have been even bigger for them in the end. But Muntz is looking really good at 10, and again, when you look at their draw for the World Cup, like they've got Wales up first, then they've got a very young, inexperienced Australia team who, like, the guys who are playing with Australia, part of the advantage that they might have, let's say, against Wales is that a lot of the Welsh players won't be used to playing against them because they're not the regular Australian team that they've played in recent years. But what Fiji will have is their Drua players have played these guys in Super Rugby, whether they're playing against the Waratahs or the Force or the Reds or whoever. So they're going to have a little bit more familiarity with those guys than maybe Wales do. And that could be enough to actually get them into a quarterfinal. And you're looking at that pool and you're thinking like, well, given the form of the three teams, Fiji really should be the favourites to win that pool and get themselves into the quarterfinal. And then it should be Australia and Wales battling out for the other position to go, to come in second and get through. Now, whether that works out like that, I don't know. But Fiji, we've seen in the past where they've been this kind of team where they've had bags and bags of talent. We've seen them do really well at sevens, but now the Drua have given them that, that ability for the players who don't play in England or in France or wherever. It's given structure to those players who are, who've been Fiji based and brought their fitness up to a level that is comparative to the other players in the squad, so that you're not getting this thing of, oh, it's Fiji, they'll give you a game for 60 minutes and then they'll all be tired and you can just run into a couple of scores at the end and make it look good, and maybe they'll get a try or two as well at the end. But you're still going to beat them by 20 or 30 points. That Fiji now, for the most part, is gone. I'm not saying that won't happen to them again, because every team can have that happen to them, but it's not going to be a consistent thing with them anymore. They're now a proper force in World Rugby. And, I think one thing that's going to come out of this Rugby World Cup and beyond is that teams like Japan, Georgia, Fiji, the likes of Samoa, Tonga, Chile, etc. Those teams need more support in between World Cups, because you can see that we could build a competitive World Cup where you could have 10 or 16 teams realistically battling out to make it with realistic chances of making a semi-final. Right now, we're not there. We have this very small group of teams who are expected, to put in a run to the semi-final or the final. But you can see that there's so much potential there, and it's starting to come to fruition. So from this, obviously, Fiji come out absolutely the better of the two. They're going into that game now against Wales, absolutely on a high. What they've got to do now, though, is they have to back up this performance. They can't just, end up living on this, dining out on this for, a few years or whatever, first win against England, etc. They've got to now go and prove that they deserve, to be at the top table. And they do that by doing it in the Rugby World Cup. England has said, if I was an England fan, I'd be super worried. I'd be super worried about the fact that the big talking point coming out of this game is probably going to be, should Marcus Smith, start to full back against Freddie Stewart? If you look at the England performance, their pack was, pretty much dominated in that second half. And, that's where the worry is. You've got to sort it out. There's no point in, worrying about who's at full back if your pack can't be competitive for 80 minutes. And, England have just got a lot to work on.